ballroom glowed in golden glass, high above the Manhattan skyline. Waiters in crisp tuxedos weaved through crystal chandeliers, carrying trays of champagne that never stayed full for long. Laughter bounced off the walls like money didn't exist. And to Griffin Wells, it didn't, not anymore. He stood under the spotlight, hand resting on a sleek podium engraved with his foundation's logo. Griffin, the 37-year-old tech visionary, clean-shaven and camera-trained, smiled like a man who'd curated every inch of his success. Beside him, his PR manager adjusted his cufflinks. "You look every bit the future president of Silicon Valley," she whispered. He winked. The room shimmered with influencers, CEOs, and senators. A six-figure violinist played near the champagne wall. His fiancée, Danica Chase, floated across the floor in a diamond-studded dress, her face sculpted by money and makeup, laughing at jokes she didn't hear. Everything was precisely as it should be, until it wasn't. The double doors creaked open mid-speech, not loudly, but just enough. A soft hush pulled at the edges of the crowd. Heads turned, first in annoyance, then disbelief. At the entrance stood a woman in a pale blue satin dress. She didn't belong, not by invite, not by association, not anymore. Her face wasn't made for gossip columns. It was made for memory. Juliet. Griffin's throat caught on air. His body stayed still, but his heartbeat rattled like glass under pressure. She hadn't changed much, except she had. Her eyes weren't the same. The girl he ghosted was gone. The woman before him radiated something else, calmness that could cut. Then the true rupture. 4 children followed in behind her, small, polished, quiet. 2 boys in navy suits, 2 girls in white tulle dresses with blue satin bows. They didn't fidget. They didn't stumble. They walked beside her as if rehearsed, and they looked just like him. Photographers froze, confused whether to snap or lower their lenses. One bulb flashed, then another. And just like that, the noise Griffin lived in collapsed into whispers. "Are those his? Wait, is that the ex? She had kids? 4? Danica stood still mid-laugh, jaw twitching. The senator beside her dropped his flute. The violinist stopped playing. Juliet didn't say a word. She didn't need to. She simply made her way toward the back of the ballroom, gliding like a shadow with 4 shadows of her own. She didn't look left or right, not even at Griffin. She stopped near the donation table, signed something, then walked past the dessert fountain with all the serenity of a woman who had nothing left to prove. Griffin's grip tightened around the podium. Sweat clung to his temple, invisible in the spotlight. His mind couldn't compute what his eyes confirmed. He tried to step down, but his legs didn't respond. Danica blinked across the room at him. "What is this?" she mouthed. He had no answer. And then, just as quickly as she arrived, Juliet turned her head. Their eyes met. No tears, no rage, just truth. She didn't blink. Griffin did. And in that blink, everything, the illusion, the control, the reinvention, began to crack. 3 years ago, Griffin Wells wasn't standing beneath chandeliers or giving TED Talks. He was pacing inside a Brooklyn brownstone, wearing sweatpants in panic. Juliet sat at the kitchen table with a pregnancy test in hand. Positive. The 3rd one. She hadn't cried. Not yet. Not until she saw how he would react. Griffin didn't yell. He didn't even flinch. He just paused. "Okay," he said finally, his tone so neutral it chilled her more than any storm. "Okay, this is a lot." She tilted her head. "A lot? Griffin, this is our child." "Our situation," he corrected, already stepping back from the table. "It's complicated. Timing's not great." Juliet blinked. "Timing? You've been talking about starting a family for 2 years." He looked away, eyes scanning the counter like it might offer him an escape hatch. "I thought I wanted that. I really did. But now that everything's taking off, maybe we should pause. Or figure something out." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was crowded, with her hopes, his excuses, and something new. Dread. "So you want me to what? Make it go away?" Her voice cracked just once. He didn't answer, but she saw it in his eyes. That night, Griffin didn't sleep in their bed. He claimed a last-minute meeting and kissed her forehead like she was a client he didn't want to offend. Juliet waited up until sunrise, checking her phone every 10 minutes. He didn't come back. The next morning, a courier slid a letter under the door. Inside, legal instructions from his lawyer. A breakup via legalese. Cold, efficient, final. Juliet sat on the edge of the bed, belly barely rounded, and read every word aloud. Alone. He never came to get his things. Never called. Never asked about doctor visits. Never even responded when she texted a photo of the first ultrasound. She stopped trying after that. Griffin was no longer a man. He was a myth stitched into a memory she'd spent years trying to cauterize. But memories don't die. They multiply, especially when there are 4 of them. She carried twins, and then 2 months before her due date came a surprise. Not 1, but 2 more. Triplets misread as twins in every scan. The 4th child arrived silent. A second cry came seconds later. All survived, barely. Juliet survived too. Just barely. Not because of him, because she had no choice. She left New York for a while, moved back to Vermont with her sister, found temp work online, and learned how to sleep with one eye open and both arms full. She refused pity, refused gossip, refused to let her children grow up feeling unwanted. What she didn't refuse was ambition. She built something, quietly, relentlessly. And now she had returned, not to make a scene, not to seek revenge, but to remind Griffin that ghosts don't stay buried just because you stop believing in them. Back in the present, Griffin stood frozen in his tuxedo, while across the room, 4 small faces blinked up at him. Not one of them smiled, and for the first time in his life, neither did he. Griffin didn't approach her, not yet. He retreated instead, to the glass balcony overlooking the city skyline, where he could breathe behind the illusion of control. Below, the city buzzed, oblivious. Inside, the Gala whispered with recognition and rising scandal. He kept his back to them. The children. Her. Juliet. He hadn't said her name in 3 years. Hadn't heard it either. Not since she was quietly erased from his biography. The PR firm scrubbed every trace, every article, every tagged post. He paid extra for silence, and silence had worked. Until tonight. The problem wasn't just that she was here. It was that she looked unshaken, as if time had sculpted her into something sharper, calmer, as if motherhood had made her immune to him. He heard the glass door slide open behind him. "Are you going to say something?" It was Claire, his executive assistant, loyal, poised, and until tonight, his safest confidant. Griffin kept his gaze forward. "How long have you known?" Claire hesitated. "That she was back? This morning. But I didn't think she'd show up here. Not like this." He turned. "4 kids, Claire." "I counted." "Jesus. You shouldn't be surprised." He flinched. "I didn't know." Claire raised a brow. "Didn't want to know." The accusation landed. Quiet. True. Griffin folded his arms. "So what happens now? Do I go over and... what? Apologize? Ask if they're mine?" "They don't need you to ask," she said flatly. "They look like you. Everyone can see it. The question is, can you?" He blinked. "Griffin, people are already whispering. The press is here. This could bury you." He almost laughed. "You think I care about press right now? Since when don't you?" Fair point. He turned back to the skyline, but now the city didn't feel like his. It felt distant, foreign, like a movie set he no longer belonged to. "Why now?" he muttered. "Why tonight?" Claire softened. Maybe she waited until they could walk in by themselves. That stung more than it should have. His eyes scanned the reflection in the glass. Juliet stood near the champagne tower, one hand lightly resting on the shoulder of the smallest child, a boy. The others circled her like planets. She wasn't seeking attention. She didn't need to. Attention found her anyway. And so did the truth. Griffin suddenly remembered the mirror in their old apartment. the one in the hallway that Juliet hated. "It shows you what you don't want to see," she used to say. He never understood that, until now, because all around him, mirrors reflected a man he didn't recognize. A man whose past was walking the room, short-legged, big-eyed, and silent. He grabbed his whiskey and turned to Claire. "Find out where she's staying." Claire blinked. "You're going to confront her?" I'm going to understand her." He left the balcony and re-entered the gala. But this time, every step toward Juliet felt like a countdown. Not to a conversation, to a reckoning. Griffin approached slowly, but Juliet didn't move. She stood near the ivy-draped champagne tower, a flute in her hand untouched. Around her, guests gave her a wide berth, as if unsure whether to gawk, greet, or escape. Her presence cracked the gala's polished atmosphere like a stone through stained glass. But it wasn't the dress or the children or the questions hanging in the air like perfume. It was her eyes, still, focused, waiting. "Juliet," Griffin said, the name nearly foreign in his own mouth. She turned, and in that moment, his breath caught. Not because she looked different, though she did. Time had sculpted her cheekbones, set resolve in her posture, but because she didn't flinch. There was no tremor in her expression. No grief, no longing, no anger. Just observation, a surgeon's calm, a mother's restraint. Griffin managed a shallow breath. "You look... well." Juliet glanced at her children. "They do, don't they?" He blinked. "That's not what I know." A pause. He tried again. "You came here for a reason." She gave a half smile, more bitter than amused. "Everything I do now is for a reason, Griffin." "I didn't know." "You didn't ask." That hit harder than any accusation. One of the girls tugged Juliet's sleeve. "Mommy, can we go see the chocolate fountain?" Juliet bent down to her level. "Yes, but only after this conversation ends. Stay close, okay?" The children lingered nearby, pretending not to listen. They didn't speak to Griffin, but they looked at him, all four of them. Same jawline, same brows, same dark-lashed eyes. Genetics didn't lie, but men did. Griffin cleared his throat. "Why now? Why this?" Juliet tilted her head. "Do you know what today is?" "My gala number. It's 3 years to the day since you ghosted me." His mouth opened, but no defense came out. No call, no message, no goodbye, just a passport left on the counter and a check I never cashed. Griffin's voice cracked. "I panicked. I wasn't ready. And I was..." The question split him open. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," he said, barely audible. "Then you should have stayed and faced me." Another pause. Juliet exhaled, then reached into her clutch. She pulled out a folded photo, the kind taken at a hospital, blurry and raw. 4 newborns side by side, eyes shut tight against the world. She handed it to him. "I named them myself, signed the birth certificates alone, raised them alone. While you built your empire, I built a life, brick by brutal brick." He gripped the photo like a verdict. "Why didn't you ever come after me?" She leaned in. Her voice was a whisper. "Because I wanted them to know I never begged for love. I earned it." Behind her, the children waited quietly. One of the boys waved at his twin. They smiled, soft, pure, unshaped by the man before them. Griffin felt something crack, not outside, but deep, somewhere under years of ego and polish. "They deserve the truth," Juliet said, turning to leave. And as she walked away, her words echoed like a sentence passed. "I didn't come to destroy you, Griffin. I came to remind you, you were never the hero in this story." Griffin stood frozen as Juliet disappeared into the crowd with the children. The photo trembled in his hand. Newborn swaddled in hospital cloth, nameless in his memory, but real in his grasp. He'd once built a tech empire off data, knowing things first, faster. But here he was, stunned by the only data that mattered. 4 lives, and he didn't even know their names. He slipped out of the ballroom, ignoring murmurs that chased him like shadows. In the hallway near the coat room, he found her again. Not Juliet, but one of the children. A girl, maybe 6, holding a chocolate-dipped strawberry like it was gold. Her hair was curled, her red shoes too polished to be accidental. She glanced up, stared. "Hi," he said, forcing a gentle tone. She didn't answer, just tilted her head like she was studying a stranger. "What's your name?" he asked. Silence. "Do you know who I am?" She nodded slowly. "You're the man Mommy used to cry about." It felt like his heart shrank inside his chest. "I'm Griffin," he offered. The girl popped the strawberry into her mouth and shrugged. "Mommy said you'd say that." "Did she?" "She also said not to be rude, so I won't be. My name's Margot." One name. He stepped closer, squatted. "Margot, that's beautiful." "Thanks, I picked it." He blinked. "You picked your name?" She nodded. "Mommy let us pick when we turned 4. Said it was part of being free." Griffin swallowed. "What about the others? What are their names?" Margot raised a hand, ticking fingers with each name. "Lucas, Leo, and Ava. 2 boys, 2 girls." "Margot, do they know that you're our dad?" she asked bluntly. He stiffened. "Mommy said we could know, but we didn't have to like it." Just then, Juliet returned, flanked by Lucas and Ava. Leo lingered near the dessert table, still fascinated by whipped cream. Juliet's expression didn't change. She simply held out her hand, and Margot took it. "She talked to me," Griffin said. "I'm sure she did," Juliet replied, calm. I needed to know their names." "You needed to know them years ago." Juliet wasn't raising her voice. She didn't need to. Her restraint made the wound deeper. "Can I talk to them?" She looked at him for a long moment. "They're not a boardroom to negotiate with. They're children. And you're a man with a memory problem." "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, "that you forget people exist when they're no longer useful to you. But kids remember everything, especially absence." The words struck him like ice water. "I just want—" "You want," she cut in, "what you always want. A clean path to redemption without getting your shoes dirty." A waiter passed behind her. She gently guided the children aside. "I didn't bring them here for you," she said. "I brought them here because they asked who their father was, and I didn't want to lie." Griffin looked down at the names spinning in his head. Margot, Lucas, Leo, Ava. 4 names, 4 faces, one choice that had fractured everything. Juliet turned to go, then paused. "Margot asked what to call you if she met you tonight," she said. "I told her, call him what you feel." Griffin couldn't answer. He didn't know which would hurt more, being called Dad, or nothing at all. Griffin didn't sleep, not after Juliet left the gala with the children, like a calm storm passing through, leaving everything intact but somehow ruined. The next morning, his assistant barged into his office without knocking, a line she had never crossed in 7 years. "You need to see this," she said, voice brittle. She dropped a folded newspaper onto his desk. Tech titan Griffin Wells, allegedly abandoned pregnant wife. Now she's back with 4 children who look just like him. Beneath the headline was a photo from last night. Juliet, serene in her pale blue dress, the 4 children arranged like a living rebuke. His mouth hung half open in the background, caught mid-recoil. The article didn't mention Juliet's name, but it didn't need to. It laid out the timeline. Griffin's meteoric rise, his sudden disappearance from the marriage registry just weeks before a major IPO, and a quote from a close family friend who said, "She was pregnant when he vanished. Everyone knew." Griffin leaned back, blood rushing in his ears. "She sold the story?" he asked, almost to himself. His assistant's eyes narrowed. "Does it matter?" The phone rang. He didn't answer. The board would see this. Investors, his mother, his rivals. "She said she didn't come for revenge," he whispered. "Maybe not," his assistant said, "but truth has a way of bleeding through, doesn't it?" He didn't respond. Instead, he opened his laptop, pulled up Google, and typed her name, Juliet Marin. For years, he'd avoided it, blocked it on social media, set search alerts only for her legal threats, never her life. Now the screen was flooded. Old photos of Juliet at his side at red carpet events, charity drives. Her face beside his in magazine spreads, branded as the woman behind the genius. But newer results caught his eye. Juliette Morin launches nonprofit for abandoned single mothers. Mothers for Dignity Gala raises $2.1 million in first year. She'd built something. Without him, she'd turned heartbreak into momentum, betrayal into blueprint. And last night, she wasn't crashing his party, she was announcing herself. Later that afternoon, a shareholder called, then another, and another. "I just want to understand what's true," one of them said, measured and cautious. "Are there children involved? Is there any legal exposure?" Griffin sat in his office, surrounded by glass and gold, staring at a photo of four faces with his bone structure and her eyes. He thought of the empty nursery they once painted. He thought of the check he never sent. He thought of the silence he mistook for closure. The article wasn't scandal, it was justice in print. By nightfall, news anchors had picked it up. Scandal trended beside his name. Meme accounts flooded in. One showed the Gala photo with the caption, "DNA never lies." His PR team begged him for a response, but Griffin said nothing. Because what could he say that wouldn't sound like a man trying to buy forgiveness with words? Later that night, when the house finally quieted, he poured a glass of whiskey and stood at the window overlooking the city he helped to digitize. Below, the world moved on, unaware that the man in the penthouse had just watched his own reputation burn to the ground. Not because someone hated him, but because someone finally stopped protecting him. Juliette didn't give interviews. She didn't write a post. She didn't even issue a statement. She simply returned to her nonprofit office the next day as if the world hadn't exploded overnight. And that precisely was what made her a sensation. While Griffin's name trended with hashtags like UntechTrader and Four Little Faces, Juliette became a quiet icon. Her gala entrance was replayed, slowed down, overlaid with dramatic music. TikTokers dubbed her the Queen of Poise, stitching clips with captions like, "She said nothing and shook the entire empire." She didn't have to say anything, because the truth, unspoken, had a voice of its own. A grainy video captured her holding her youngest daughter's hand outside the nonprofit. When a journalist tried to ask her, "Are you seeking compensation from Mr. Wells?" she simply smiled and helped the child into her car. The clip went viral in under an hour. "She doesn't want money, she just wants peace," one commenter wrote. "That's what makes her dangerous." Inside his penthouse, Griffin scrolled endlessly. His PR team had drafted 3 versions of a statement, one denying, one accepting partial truth, and one apologizing. He hadn't approved any of them. "Sir, you're bleeding out in silence," his publicist said on a call. "Then maybe silence is what I deserve," he muttered. Juliette's quiet refusal to engage became her power. And with it, something unexpected began to shift. People started digging deeper. Old court records surfaced, sealed but not impenetrable. Records of Juliette filing for child support, for abandonment, acknowledgement. All dismissed due to technicalities or Griffin's legal walls. Now the public saw the pattern. He hadn't just ghosted her, he'd erased her. Sponsors began backing out. One major tech partner pulled from an upcoming AI conference, citing a need to align with companies led by ethically sound leadership. The damage wasn't just social, it was systemic. And Juliette, she was still silent. But her nonprofit's website now featured a new homepage banner, a soft photo of her 4 children playing in a sunlit park. No captions, no names. Just a button that said, "Support families left behind." The donations rolled in. By the end of the week, the nonprofit had raised more than it had in the past year combined. She was building something out of the ashes of his cowardice. And she wasn't even using his name to do it. Late that Friday night, Griffin sat alone in his dark office, the skyline blinking like it was mocking him. He opened Instagram. Her page was private. He created a fake account, clicked follow. No response, and then he typed a message. "You were always stronger than me. I see that now. I hope they have your eyes." He hovered over the send button, then deleted it. What right did he have? He was a ghost in their lives now, a shadow behind a woman who refused to turn around. And somehow the silence, the one she wore like a crown, was louder than any scream he could ever make. Griffin sat in his car for 47 minutes. Engine off, phone face down. A bouquet of white tulips sat on the passenger seat, sweating in the afternoon sun. Just beyond the gates was a modest house with blue shutters, the kind of place no one would suspect held 4 pieces of his DNA inside. He had found the address through public tax records, quietly, discreetly. No lawyers, no press, just a father, a stranger. The front yard was cluttered with chalk drawings and half-deflated soccer balls. A tricycle lay toppled near the steps. Wind chimes danced above the porch. It was not the kind of place Griffin had ever imagined himself connected to, but now it was the only place that mattered. He stepped out of the car, fixing his collar. As he reached the front gate, he stopped. Juliet was there. She had stepped onto the porch holding a basket of folded laundry, barefoot, her pale blue sundress swaying in the breeze. Their eyes met. No anger, no smile, just recognition. He lifted the bouquet. I just wanted to... No, she said gently, like a whisper meant for a different time. You don't get to come here. I'm not trying to make a scene. She stepped down 2 steps, her tone still soft. Then don't. There was no rage, no drama, only a boundary spoken with unbearable kindness. I didn't know how to do it, he said, voice cracking. The whole being a father thing. I didn't think I could. So I ran. Juliet looked at the flowers, then back at him. They're not waiting for you, Griffin. I didn't raise them too. That hurt more than shouting ever could. He swallowed. Can I see them? Just once. She shook her head slowly. It wouldn't be for them. It would be for you. A small face peeked through the curtains. One of the girls. Maybe 6 or 7. Curly hair. Curious eyes. He took a step forward. Juliet turned slightly. Go back inside, honey. The curtain dropped. The moment ended. I'm not punishing you, she said. This is mercy. For all of us. Griffin's throat tightened. Do they know about me? She nodded once. The truth, not the headline, not the hashtags. He lowered the flowers. She reached for them, then paused. Leave them for someone you've already hurt. He looked down ashamed. I never stopped thinking about you. I know, she said. That was part of the problem. He stepped backward toward the gate. I'm not going to write a book, she added. I'm not going to destroy you in interviews. That's not the kind of legacy I want to leave them. Griffin stopped at the edge of the sidewalk, eyes damp. Then what will they remember? Juliet hesitated. Then, that I stayed. And you didn't. He nodded, turned, walked away. The bouquet was still sweating in the sun. Juliet went inside, closed the door behind her, and held her breath for a long, quiet moment. Then one of the twins asked, Mommy, who was that man? And she answered, without trembling, someone I used to know. The news didn't break all at once. It dripped slowly, like a leaky faucet, until the public couldn't ignore it anymore. First, a blurry photo of Juliet leaving Griffin's gala with 4 children in tow. Then a whisper in the financial press. The reclusive ex resurfaces with look-alike kids. The tech world buzzed. Social media trended. Investors grew skittish. But Griffin wasn't at the office to address it. He wasn't at the lab, or in San Francisco, or Dubai. He had disappeared again. Only this time, the world noticed. Juliet sat at her small kitchen table, sipping tea while the children argued over cereal. She'd stopped watching TV, stopped opening the comments on the viral posts. She knew better than to try and control how the world processed a narrative it didn't earn the right to own. But then came the envelope. Thick, ivory, no return address. Inside, an invitation. It wasn't to another gala. It was a board hearing. Private, urgent. The foundation Griffin had built was under scrutiny. The investors wanted reassurance. The media wanted fire. And for the first time in years, Griffin had written her directly. Just one sentence. You're the only person who ever really knew me. Will you speak for who I used to be? Juliet read it twice, then folded it and tucked it into her drawer. She didn't answer. Across town, Griffin sat in a dim hotel suite, watching his empire fracture on cable news. Wells Global hit with renewed scrutiny after silent founder vanishes. He had built everything on image, stability, logic, perfection. But the truth had always been unstable, emotional, human. He scrolled through an old photo of himself and Juliet on a balcony in Venice, years ago. Her eyes laughed in that photo. His hand rested on her pregnant belly. He remembered what came after. His retreat, the NDA, the silence, the wire transfer that was supposed to erase guilt. It hadn't. Now it all hung in limbo. His reputation, his holdings, his control. He thought of Juliet's words, "I'm not punishing you. This is mercy." He wondered if she would show him mercy again. Speak for him, protect the illusion a little longer, or let it crumble, like she had every right to. At the care center where she now volunteered part-time, Juliet sat beside a dying woman whose memory flickered in and out. The woman gripped her hand, whispering names of people long gone. Juliet smiled gently, whispering back, "You're not alone." Later that evening, Juliet wrote a reply on plain paper. Not the ivory kind. She didn't mail it. She didn't even seal it. She left it with someone she trusted should they ask again. It read, "You built a world where truth was negotiable. I built one where my children would never doubt who loved them. Let that speak for both of us." No signature, no return address. Griffin received no reply. But the morning of the hearing, he saw her in the gallery, silent, seated in the back row. Not to defend him, not to condemn him, just to witness. That was enough to make him finally speak. His opening line wasn't about profits or partnerships. It was about failure. "I built something meant to last forever," he said, "and I left behind the only thing that ever could." Griffin hadn't looked at Juliet during the entire hearing. But when it ended, when the legal team packed their briefcases and the board members shuffled out, whispering about optics and damage control, he finally turned. She was still there, sitting alone, hands folded in her lap. Calm, measured. Like she had been the night she walked into the gala with their children and dismantled his world without raising her voice. He approached slowly. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't blink. "Can we talk?" he asked. She stood. "Not here," she replied. They met at the edge of the city, far from cameras and boardrooms. A quiet rooftop, overlooking the fog-shrouded skyline. The same place he once told her he couldn't be a father. The same night she walked away pregnant and unseen. This time she came with a voice. He came with an offer. "I want you to run the foundation," he said, hands in his coat pockets. "Your work with displaced women, education, everything I claim to care about, you actually lived." Juliet raised an eyebrow. "Is this an apology or a business transaction?" Griffin didn't answer right away. "It's both. It's what I should have done years ago." She stepped closer, but not warmly. "You want me to clean up your legacy?" "No," he said quietly. "I want to give it to someone who deserves it." Juliet looked out at the city lights. She thought of the gala, of the whispers, of the 4 children sleeping in their shared room with nightlights shaped like stars. "You ghosted your own children," she said, "and now you want me to save your name?" "No," he repeated. "I want you to erase it if you want. Rename the foundation. Rebuild it. Just make it something real." She turned to him, really looking now. Not at the millionaire, at the man. At the empty space inside him that no money ever filled. "You know what silence costs, Griffin?" she asked. He nodded, eyes wet. "Everything." She paused, then reached into her bag. Pulled out a folded sheet of paper, unfolded it slowly. The draft of a new charter, one she had written long ago, before the twins were born, back when she believed he'd want to build something together. "I wrote this before you disappeared," she said. "I thought we were building something real then." He took the paper with shaking hands. "I'll sign it," he said. "I already did," she replied. "I just never submitted it." Silence settled again, but not the kind that haunted, the kind that closed a chapter. Back home, Juliet placed the signed papers in her filing cabinet beneath the children's drawings and medical forms. She didn't tell the kids, not yet, but later that night, when one of them asked why the stars on the ceiling were flickering, she smiled. "Because even stars get tired," she whispered, tucking them in. Griffin watched the news the next morning. The foundation had been renamed. The Juliet Wells Initiative for Unheard Voices, quietly launched with zero press fanfare and a single photo. A woman standing in front of a modest center for women's health, surrounded by children. No millionaire in sight. He didn't cry. But for the first time in years, he didn't reach for his phone either. He just sat there and listened to the silence he left behind. Rain tapped softly on the windows of the modest townhouse, the kind Juliet had chosen for its quiet, not for prestige. In the upstairs hallway, the children were playing hide and seek. Laughter bounced off the walls, shrill and full of the kind of innocence she fought so hard to protect. Until the drawer opened. It wasn't locked. It wasn't meant to be found, not yet. But children, as always, were curious. Inside was a pale blue envelope, weathered at the corners, slightly smudged by time. One of the twins pulled it out, inspecting the slanted handwriting. "Mom," she called, voice uneven. "This says your name." Juliet appeared moments later, a towel in her hand, mid-laundry. When she saw what they were holding, her hands froze. She hadn't touched that letter in over a year. It was Griffin's handwriting. She'd found it hidden behind a legal binder months after the gala, tucked inside an old briefcase delivered quietly by his assistant. No name, no return address. Just the letter, unsigned, unread, until now. The children gathered around her. "Can you read it?" one asked. Juliet hesitated, then nodded. She unfolded it slowly, smoothing the page out on the kitchen table. Her voice was steady, but something inside her trembled. "Juliet, I don't expect forgiveness. I wouldn't know what to do with it if you gave it. But I owe you a truth. The night I left, I was afraid. Not of being a father, of being seen. I knew you'd know the worst in me, my cowardice, my selfishness, and you'd still love me. That terrified me. I didn't ghost you. I ghosted the version of myself I couldn't face. If the children ask someday, tell them I never stopped thinking about them. That I saw their photos in every donation I made, every award I accepted, every mirror I passed. You made them real, and you made me see what real looked like. I left because I didn't deserve that kind of light." G. Silence hung after the last word. The kids didn't ask who G was. They already knew. Juliet folded the letter again, her fingers slow, deliberate. She didn't cry. Instead, she walked to the pantry, pulled down a small wooden box, and placed the letter inside, next to hospital bracelets, baby photos, and the foundation's first donation receipt. "Is he coming back?" one of the boys asked. Juliet met his eyes. "No," she said gently, "but he sent something more honest than presents." The children didn't fully understand. But that night, none of them asked about their father. They just asked for an extra bedtime story, and she gave them one she wrote herself. 3 weeks later, Griffin Wells stood in the last place he ever imagined, behind the velvet ropes of an exhibit bearing his name, surrounded by photographs he hadn't curated. It was the new children's wing of the city's most prestigious public library, sponsored not by his tech foundation, but by Juliet's. The signage read, "The light we deserve, a dedication to quiet strength." He hadn't been invited. He came anyway. There was no red carpet, no press, just a quiet crowd of families, kids running with juice boxes, parents in second-hand coats, and shelf after shelf of children's books selected with care. Griffin didn't spot her at first. She was kneeling on the floor with one of the twins, helping her glue together a paper crown. Her hair was pinned up loosely, her dress simple, worn. There was no makeup, no spotlight, but there was peace. He didn't go to her, didn't interrupt. Instead, he walked through the exhibit. Along the wall were framed prints, black and white photos of small hands, quiet moments, and one series that stopped him cold. 4 children seated in a circle, coloring, same eyes, same jawline. Each photo bore a name: Leora, Gabriel, Eden, Miles. Beneath them, a quote: "We are not the echo of what left us. We are the future that stayed." Griffin backed away slightly. There were tears, but he didn't let them fall. He exited through the side entrance, unnoticed. That night, he returned to his penthouse for the final time. He didn't turn the lights on. There was nothing left in the space but shadows. The art had been removed. The staff dismissed. The grand piano now silent, its cover closed like a casket. Griffin walked the length of the marble hallway and stopped in the bedroom doorway. The bed was untouched. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside, the engagement ring he had once designed for Juliet, never delivered. It had sat in a drawer for 3 years. He placed it on the windowsill, where the city lights could see it. Then he moved to the wall safe behind the painting. Inside, a USB stick. The one Juliet had returned by courier after the gala. No note, no explanation, just the file. He slid it into his laptop and hit play. There was no video, only a voice, Juliet's. You once asked me before you left, what kind of woman forgives someone who walks out on her while she's carrying 4 lives? I never answered, because I hadn't become her yet. You see, Griffin, forgiveness isn't a favor. It's not a transaction or a peace treaty. It's something we grow into if we survive long enough. I grew without you, but I also gave our children your smile, your stubbornness, and your capacity to feel, even when you pretend you can't. So for them, I forgive you. For me, I've already moved on. The file ended. No music, no signature. Just silence. Griffin leaned back, staring at the black screen. Then slowly he closed the laptop and reached for the remote. He turned off the lights, room by room, until only the reflection in the window remained, and even that eventually faded.